May the one who began a good work, may the one who began a good work, may the one who began a good work be faithful to complete it in you.
John McKinnon left in the early 50s to go. He was still in the Air Force, and he was called back to active duty in 1952 to serve as a chaplain with the Air Force. And so then we have another pulpit committee, and in 1953 came Bill Schotanus.
Yeah. And the funny thing about that was Daddy was chairman of that pulpit committee.
Mm-hmm.
And so he got this, he wrote to the seminaries for recommendations of seniors who were ready to go out into the ministry. And he read Bill Schotanus's, and Bill had graduated from Georgia Tech with a degree in engineering, and he had worked 8 years in some occupation related to that. And then he had decided to go into ministry, and had by that time a little girl, Nan Schotanus, and his mother helped him raise her while he went as a day student to seminary in Columbia, and then in Decatur, Georgia. Anyway, so Daddy had in his papers recommending him the name, and he saw the name Schotanus, or Schotanis.
N-U-S.
And so he had never heard it pronounced. So he called to talk to him over the phone and invite him up to meet us and preach. And he called him Mr. Schotanus.
Right. Well, that has carried through the years. Apparently, people that don't remember him still don't know how to pronounce his name, but it is Schotanus. And Bill Schotanus is still living. He lives in Richmond, where Nan lives, and he is 102, and you are
104.
So, and you all have talked,
Yeah.
fairly regularly over the years, and
Yeah.
kept up with each other. He was another one who had he still has a great sense of humor, and
Yeah.
he was a great guy. One of the stories about when he was here was the communion service where Mrs. Lyons, who was a charter member, and she was just a stalwart member of the church up until the end of her life, she was charged with preparing communion, and she was going to be out of town, so she had taken mayonnaise jars, or a big mayonnaise jar, and put the bread torn up, broken up, in the mayonnaise jar, and he was supposed to have taken it out before the service and put it on the trays where it belonged, and the communion table was all covered with a cloth. And so the cloth comes off, and there's the mayonnaise jar with the the bread in it. And so Bill tells that story of realizing he hadn't followed up and gotten the bread out of the mayonnaise jar. During that time, one thing that I remember about those kids that were born in 1946, that was such a large group of kids, And you and Jenny C. taught their Sunday school class, and why was that?
Well, that was a class for really toddlers. Those children were 2 and 3 and 4 years old. And I remember one Sunday we were teaching about the woman who had the jar of precious ointment that she was using on Jesus' head. And we thought we'd make it kind of dramatic, so we took a bottle of perfume and we were passing it around for the children to smell. And the little girls would smell it and kind of sigh, and they got to the little boys, and the first little boy picked it up and smelled it and said, "Phew."
I think that's an ambitious story to teach toddlers.
Well, we were trying.
Well, I've always heard that you and Jenny took that class because Jay and Bob wouldn't behave for anybody else.
Well, we thought that we could make them behave better. Yeah, they were in the class as little toddlers.
Along with Bill Rankin and all those, Danny Thompson,
Yeah.
all those kids. We had seen somewhere where in one year some astonishing number of children were baptized, and I was trying to find that.
I thought you said 60 something.
I believe it was something like that. It was a big old number. All right. Ben Thompson became the first Presbyterian moderator in 1958 to come from Waverly Road. And later Tom Bainbridge was Presbyterian moderator. And then wasn't Doris Carson the first woman to serve as Presbyterian moderator?
Right.
And so that would have been sometime probably in the 60s or 70s, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, well, I don't remember.
Anyway, Bill Schotanus left in, I believe, 1958. And long about that time, we started the tradition of the birthday party for Jesus and Christmas pageant. And which has been a fun part of our history for so many years. Also, in the late 50s was when the land for Holston Camp was purchased and work started on that. And so people from Waverly Road, early on, they would have weekend work parties to go up there and clear the land and do all the initial work on that. Now, what I remember about the 50s, when we were in the old sanctuary where the offices and the gathering space are now, I remember we still had Wednesday night, well, we still had Sunday evening services. We had like youth group, and then we had a service, right? And I remember, particularly in the summertime, the windows would all be open. Of course, there's no air conditioning. And I just have a real fond memory of those evening services. We sang hymns that were just evening hymns, that you really don't sing during the morning services. But that was a special time for me. Now we're but what year was the the present sanctuary built? I'm having a hard time finding that in this. I'm thinking it was like 1958. I think Collier was here. It probably was
I was thinking 1950.
right around the time Bill Schotanus left
Yeah.
and Collier came.
I was thinking 1958.
Because I pretty much, it says Collier came in the spring of '59. So I think we were building the church and it was already, I want to say 1958-ish or so.
Yeah,
Um,
that's close.
yeah, it's close anyway.